Okay, please help me welcome Dina Garcia, founder of Vida Nutrition. Dina is a dietitian and a mindful eating coach. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me today.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for joining me today. I'm so excited to dive into everything that you have to offer. And before we go too professional, do you want to fill us in on your personal life?
Yeah, so I'm a registered dietitian. I'm also a mom of two amazing little kids, almost 9 and 11. And I've been a dietitian for about 15 years. Love the outdoors. Being in Miami, luckily it's kind of like summer year round here. I'm originally from the Midwest though, so I still go back there, get to experience some cold and snow in the winter, and yeah.
Yeah, so we actually have a decent amount in common. I've got a 9 and 11-year-old. I'm Midwest, born and raised, and yeah, I feel like we probably graduated around the same time.
Probably. I just turned 40 too. That was exciting.
Okay, we totally did that. Me too. Congrats. I feel like that's like an accomplishment in itself to get to this
Right.
phase of life. And then there's something that you have on your website, and I was like, oh, this is so me too. You have a quote on there that I can help you connect the dots between knowing what to eat and actually doing it. And I always say that my clients say to me, I know what to do. I just need to do it. I'm like, I know.
Exactly.
So that's the accountability piece that I feel like comes in for all of us. Okay. Professionally. So you founded Vida Nutrition. Tell us how this business came to be.
Yeah. So, it's funny, like when I was a kid, I think I was always an entrepreneur at heart. So even though, I chose a profession that I love and that I'm passionate about, that's how I got into nutrition. But I think I've always been an entrepreneur. So I knew from the beginning when I graduated that at some point I was going to start a private practice. It just took me a little while. I think I had been a dietitian about 7 years by the time I started a private practice because I moved around a bit. I lived in California for a while, then moved back to Indiana. Now I'm in Miami. So just, didn't make sense to me to really start a private practice when I was still moving around a bit.
Right.
And virtual consultations and things like that weren't quite as popular 15 years ago. So here I am. So I always knew I wanted to start a private practice, and it was really quite a journey for me, of self-discovery. Like it took me years to really figure out what the heck I wanted to do with my private practice and what my niche was going to be and who the people I was going to help were. And part of why it took me so long was because it was my own journey of self-discovery in terms of what things I needed to come to terms with and heal, with my own relationship with food. And so I don't think I would have ever gotten there had I not started a private practice, which forced me to really get real with myself.
Oh, I love this. You're going to have to unpack this more. Can you go a little deeper for
Yeah,
us?
of
Do you mind
course.
telling us that story?
Yeah, so I started my private practice thinking in my head, like, oh, I'm going to sign up with insurance companies. And then, people will call me from their insurance companies and I'll market to doctors. And like, this is going to be easy. Like, sure, I'll put in work and everything,
Right,
but like,
right.
this is just going to fall into place. Wrong. The first thing I learned was that it's basically impossible for dietitians in Florida to get onto insurance, or at least in South Florida, to get into insurance panels, into their networks. So I even hired a company at one point to credential me with the insurance companies. They came back 3, 4 months later and were like, we're just going to refund your money. We can't get anywhere. So, I mean, it's like that bad. And they
Wow.
specialize in dietitians and credentialing with insurance companies. So,
Wow.
yeah. So what that means is you have to get really good at marketing yourself and
Yeah.
like, selling, but not like in a salesy way, like in a helpful, I want to help people kind of way.
Yeah. That I'm out
And
here and I have something to offer way.
right. And like that
Yes.
was super uncomfortable for me. Like that wasn't something I was expecting to jump into. And through that process of learning how to sell my, services and get people to be my client and pay cash for it, right? It's not cheap. Um, is at least not compared to, using your insurance. So what I learned through that, and I think every business coach is going to say this, like you have to get very niche specific. Like you've got to really niche down because you have to really be the person for these people
Right.
if they're going to pay cash for your services.
Right.
And that whole process is what really, like, I mean, aside from the like getting comfortable talking about money thing, which was very uncomfortable at first, and then the whole like, how do I niche down? really helped, obviously at this point I was already working with clients. So that allowed me to feel out some things, what felt good about what I was doing, what didn't feel good about what I was doing, energetically, and what better ways could I help clients. And little by little, I kind of came down this path of intuitive eating, learning about health at every size. And it was like an entire paradigm shift for me.
Yeah.
And there was a huge amount of cognitive dissonance that I was experiencing for like probably 2 years or more, where my brain was just kind of floating back. Like, I understand these concepts, but wow, it's so different than everything I've ever, experienced and learned and
Right.
been exposed to. And that whole shift. So that's how I got into binge, focusing on binge and emotional eating and chronic dieters, because that is really specific, and it solves a problem that isn't so general,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And so part of what led me into this path was my own past history with binge and emotional eating, right?
Okay.
So that,
Okay.
and I grew up in a household where dieting was very normal, and talked about. And my mom, I love her to death. We have a great relationship, but she is very self-conscious of her body, and always concerned about being thin enough. And you absorb those messages as a child, and you see her diet, and you just kind of start to think, this is what you do, right? You dislike your body, and you alter your food in order to change that, right? And
Yeah.
so I really became a dietitian, I think, because there was a side of me that said, this isn't right.
Right.
I want to do things in a more logical way, but I didn't really understand that. And so as I became a dietitian, I actually went through another period of binging. So I did a lot of binge eating in high school. I was bulimic for a short amount of time, like maybe 6 months. But then I honestly got scared of being caught. Like the idea of like how shameful it was in my head was like not worth continuing it.
Yeah.
But I still like over exercised and tried to diet and went off and on with binge eating. And then as I graduated and became a dietitian, I actually like started gaining weight very quickly and became pre-diabetic, and just really had an unhealthy relationship with food.
Yeah.
Going through periods of binging, it's like the harder I tried to stop eating,
The
the more
worse or
I would
harder it got.
overeat. And I
Yeah.
had what I call the I'll start Monday mentality, which
Yeah.
you can apply to any day of the week, but it's like, if I just eat this today, it won't be here tomorrow, and I'll start over.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Oh,
and so as I came into this specialty of binge and emotional eating, so I had never actually told anybody about my eating disorder, about my binge eating, about the bulimia. Nobody knew this about me. I mean, people would have had no idea. And I actually had to like tell people. I mean, I didn't have to, but I felt like I needed to. Like my family and my parents, my brothers, some of my friends, and they were just like, whoa, I had no idea. Like, I'm like, yeah, like this is what went on inside. Like, and I have to stop this for other
pause
people.
for a second.
Yeah.
And because I think that like somebody hearing that you did that and you just being able to like easily say it right now was
Not
the first
well, now,
person.
back then.
I'm sure. Did it
Yeah.
get, I mean, terrifying the first time you said it to somebody, and then did it get a little easier, and could you tell like, this is the right thing for me? I just needed to be free from this. Like, how did that process go?
Yeah, I mean, once I realized that people didn't freak out when I told them,
Yeah.
and the fact that I had moved, like at this point, I had already moved past it, right? Like, I'd worked through it. So I think that made it easier, for sure. But, that's one of the things when I'm working with clients now is, sometimes they hide some of their relationship with food from their spouses, their
Yeah.
parents, their friends. And because of that hiding, they're really lacking an opportunity for support, or the people that the support people in their lives, if they don't know about it, they may not be supporting them in the right way because they're not aware of it, and they may be making it worse. So yeah, I mean, it definitely got much easier over time,
Yeah.
to talk about it, but I still get choked up when
I bet.
when not about me, but when I think about, I had to hold it back a second ago, but when I said about I have to stop this for other people,
Yeah.
that'll get me choked up, because thinking about other people being in that kind of pain,
Yeah.
it's heartbreaking.
You want to save them from it, right?
Right.
And then I get choked up when I talk about our kids and just like how you were saying that you felt affected, in your environment that whatever we live in, we kind of deem as our normal. And I just feel like, to get our kids through these hard years, and they're going into them right now. You and I are living smack in the middle of it. That brings me to tears really fast too. Just like, holy cow, there's so many different ways that I could screw this up.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there is, sometimes we have to like, take a deep breath and just say, I'm doing my best,
Yeah.
like,
Oh, for sure. Yes. And then have support systems like this, that it's so nice to know, that we're all going through it. And the more open and honest that we can be, the further we get with it. Yeah. So I love that you are so open and you're hopeful. One of the things that you had mentioned, like this is again, how you kind of found your niche. You had mentioned that you help binge eaters and chronic dieters eat their trigger foods without guilt or fear of binging. And I think that a lot of people who have been in your shoes don't even think that that's an option for them, that like that guilt could actually not be there.
or even that I could not binge on it. I mean, it's like,
right.
I see so often, it's like, oh, well, I just avoid this, and that, like, I can't eat those because I lose control. So like,
right.
Their strategy becomes total avoidance. But, I don't know that I've experienced an individual, I had a conversation with an individual where, they've actually successfully restricted from it for an extended period of time. Sure, maybe 3 months, or maybe they go through a year, or they go through a month, or, it always varies, but like, they're not actually able to restrict from it. So then when they give in, then it's like, oh, I need to have as much of this as I can. Right.
Right. Because it's going to go away again.
Right. And so being able to get to a point where you can have those foods, like one of my biggest trigger foods was ice cream. There's, obviously it tastes yummy, and, the texture and it, I don't know, the coldness. And also there's a lot of nostalgia with ice cream. We used to make a lot of homemade ice cream as a kid, going out to get ice cream. Like there's just so much fun in your head about ice cream, at least for me. So ice cream was always a trigger food for me. And I used to say, like, I never have ice cream in my house, because the minute it comes in the front door, like, it's in my stomach. And that was a food I would always binge on. And if by chance I didn't finish the entire container that night, I would be eating it for breakfast in the morning. Like, it just didn't exist in my house. So like, now I can have ice cream in my house and forget about it. So
it's amazing. That's so, yes.
I do still eat ice cream frequently, but I don't binge on it. Like it's totally different. Totally different experience.
Can you, for the common person out there who maybe isn't around these terms very often, like describe trigger food?
Yeah. So trigger food is a term that I use just to describe a food that triggers us to overeat, right? Like it just triggers the compulsion. And it can also trigger guilt, negative feelings around food. Like a lot of times with clients, I tell them it's not the overeating that is an issue. It's the emotion and the side effects that we have as a result of that eating. I mean, I have clients who, can full on binge and feel an immense amount of guilt and stress related to that binge and physical discomfort. And I can have another client who can have a similar level of guilt and shame and negative emotion around eating, 2 Reese's cups.
Right. I'm so glad you just said that. Truly, because I was going to say, if we could just talk spectrum of like who this exists for, because I don't want the person who's going, well, I don't think I binge. This doesn't pertain to me, when the reality is it's exactly, you just hit the nail on the head. It doesn't have to look like a binge. It can just be the guilt, the emotions that come along with it. Thank you.
Right. Absolutely. That's why I say binge eaters and chronic dieters, because they're very different. It's very different. So just to kind of put onto a spectrum what binge eating is. So we have, looking on this side, we have emotional eating, right? Emotional eating is very normal. Like I would even dare to say every individual on the planet eats out of emotion sometimes, right? We celebrate, we're bored, we're stressed, we're sad. There's lots of emotions that we use, but so we eat out of emotion versus out of hunger, right? Like that happens. Okay.
Yes.
Then we have emotional overeating. So this is when we allow our emotions to cause us to eat an excessive amount of food, right? So in this phase, this is where maybe a chronic dieter may fall. And again, the problem isn't so much the fact that they overate or that they emotionally ate. I mean, we can certainly work on strategies for that. But the bigger thing I think that needs healed is the reaction to that overeating, because that reaction, the guilt and the shame, actually can keep us in that cycle of overeating. So it's actually making the problem worse. So one of the really important places to intervene is just the emotional response to that overeating. Then we have then we have binge eating. So binge eating is in really simple terms where we eat, an individual eats an abnormally large amount of food within a short amount of time. So usually less than 2 hours. It can even be, even shorter than that, but within 2 hours eating an excessively large amount of food. So that's very subjective, right? Very subjective. So for some people, it can be things like, a whole large pizza and, chicken wings or whatever. For other people, it can be a handful of chips, now 4 cookies, now 2 spoonfuls of almond butter. Now let me go back to, of some ice cream. And then, so it can look like all these things kind of put together. Oftentimes with binge eating, it is accompanied with feelings of guilt, remorse, negative self-talk, and oftentimes leads to us feeling a level of physical discomfort.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then binge eating disorder is when you're binge eating on such a consistent and regular basis that it isn't a diagnosed eating disorder. So there's this spectrum of, where people can fall. But in any of those stages, even in just emotional eating, an individual can experience an immense amount of guilt and shame associated with their food choices.
Right. Okay. You broke that down so beautifully. If a listener is going, oh, I fit into X, Y, or Z within there, what is your next, obviously like a reach out to you? Do you have therapists that you oftentimes also refer? Yeah.
Yeah. So I encourage all of my clients to work with a therapist. I think that the whole entire world would be a better place if we all just occasionally saw a therapist. I'm not saying you got to go every week.
No, maintenance therapy.
Right. I mean, what doesn't feel good about sitting and talking about your problems to somebody who can't tell anyone and isn't going to judge you, or if they do, who cares? You're never going to see them, outside of therapy probably. So like, it just feels good to get that out, in total transparency and, get some feedback from somebody who's trained to help you process those emotions. Right.
Love that. Yes.
So I think therapy is just a wonderful thing. I mean, sometimes when I go to my therapist, I think she kind of looks at me like, why are you even here? But if I'm like, oh, she's like, I hope this helped. She could ask me. I'm like, no, this was great. Like, I just needed to get that out,
I needed this today. Yes.
But it's depending on where somebody is on that spectrum of emotional eating to binge eating disorder. I mean, if somebody has binge eating disorder, hands down, they have to see a therapist. Like if you're going to see me, you have to see a therapist, because there's typically a lot going on, a lot to unpack. Maybe some underlying anxiety issues, past traumas, potentially. So we really need to cover all of our bases there. So I do recommend that. I also have an in-house hypnotherapist that I work with that I refer my clients to. Yeah. So, a lot of people don't quite understand what hypnotherapy is, but essentially it is, getting into a relaxed state as if you're doing a meditation. It's very, it's kind of like being in a meditation, except for she's guiding you through that meditation with stories that are parallel to maybe issues that you're having. So your brain can start to see this issue, this behavior, this pattern in a different way.
Yeah.
And when you're in that meditative state, essentially your brain is just more open to suggestion.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
I was just gonna say, I had a friend go through that when she was trying to quit smoking. And one of the ways she described it was that it really helped take away, like when it was actually the addiction that was, stopping her from quitting. And then obviously she was still left with like the emotional wants of a cigarette or the handheld type thing. But the hypnotherapy really helped her get through those first few days of like, this is so hard. So do you notice that what do you hear from your clients?
So typically I wait until I've seen my clients for at least 3 or 4 sessions before I refer them over to the hypnotherapist, because I'm actually pretty good at like pinpointing what somebody's underlying like sticking point might be. What is this thing that's really keeping them stuck? And then from there, I refer them to her. So I could be referring them to her for like a multitude of reasons. It could be something really as broad as seeing themselves as a priority. Maybe they're struggling to eat regular balanced meals because they're putting everyone else's needs in front of themselves. And if they can't eat regular balanced meals during the day, they're probably going to keep binging at night.
Interesting.
So,
Yes.
but when they can't see that they're a priority and that their needs have to be met first, this is a big barrier, right?
Right.
It could also be for something general, like, more in lines with like the craving and how to work through like that intent. So she does have a background in addiction. She worked at a drug rehab facility for a number of years prior to our work together. So she just have a lot of experience with that. And other times it can just be more anxiety related, having, learning how to let go of stresses, learning how to ask for things like that can be a barrier for people. Like sometimes I notice that, people may have a hard time asking for what they need. Right. And so then that leaves them run down, their needs not taken care of, give, and they're not really getting enough for themselves. And that can be a barrier.
Dina, you're blowing my mind. I love that you have an in-house therapist. This is amazing.
Yeah. So I actually see her too sometimes. Like she's amazing. Like she's taught me a lot about meditation and like how to get myself relaxed. Like I struggled for quite a while with like, because I have kids. And so I have like a very hard deadline of when I need to walk out of the office.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you have to leave things like very undone, like you're like, oh, but I only need like 10 more minutes and then it'll be like totally finished and I can relax. It's like, nope. And then when you come back, it's going to be, even though you only have 10 minutes of work left, it's going to take you 30 minutes to get back in the groove and get it restarted. And so like that created a lot of anxiety for me for a while. And so she was able to help me like let that go and just be at peace with like leaving things and moving on and, not having that residual anxiety when I walked out the door.
Could somebody come to her and not even totally know what they need out of her and she'd be able to?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. She's really good at digging in and asking questions and getting you thinking about, what's going on. Yeah. I think a lot of times people come with a generic, like, I feel stressed, like.
Yes.
There's really something much deeper going on there.
Right. Well, okay. And I know that you do virtual consults, just like how we're sitting across from each other right now. Does she do that as well?
So she does. So that is something we started during COVID and it has actually worked out really well. In fact, the clients who were with her, kind of in this shift of COVID, several of them actually came and said, I actually like the virtual better.
Yeah.
Because they're at home, they're in their own chair, they're adjusting the temperature, they have headphones on, so it really sounds like she's in your head, they enjoy that. There's no like they start off more relaxed. They didn't just fight traffic to get here and rushing, and then they have to like come into a session and try to calm down. It's not always easy, and so a lot of them have actually said they enjoy the home sessions, like the Zoom sessions, better.
I can absolutely see that. So cool. So if anybody's ears are perking up right now, they could go to vidanutrition.com and be able to find you as well as this therapist, correct? Yes.
Absolutely.
So cool. Okay, back to food. You mentioned this word restriction, and this is a big deal. And I don't think that people understand how big of a deal it is. So can you just go to town on this word restriction?
So this, I have yet to find a case of binge eating or emotional overeating where there is not a component of restriction. I will have clients tell me I don't restrict or no, there's no restriction, right? But I've yet to not be able to uncover some form of restriction that's going on. And so the obvious way that restriction shows up is dieting, right? So an individual says, I have a past history of dieting, but I'm not currently dieting, right? So they're like, so I'm not restricting, right? Or, but I'm eating so much, there's no way I could be restricting, right? So restricting isn't always physical restriction. There's also like conscious and unconscious restriction, and it can also play on us mentally. So looking at it from the physical side, right? Like if we're physically restricting food, the body's going to feel deprived, right? It's going to evoke a survival response, and then we may swing the other way. So it's like a pendulum, right? Like we undereat and then we overeat, and that can be from day to day, week to week, even hour to hour, right? So like I see people undereat during the day, they overeat at night. Like the pendulum swings. Or it could be 3 months of undereating followed by 3 to 6 months of overeating. Like the time can really vary in how that pendulum swings, how quickly it swings. So there's the physical restriction, but then there's also like the emotional restriction. So when we crank through the diet cycle, right, which is I need to lose weight, I restrict food, eventually my body says, screw this, like I need to eat, and like I don't have any more willpower, we regain the weight and we're back to like I want to lose weight, right? Every time we crank through that cycle, at the bottom there where we have the physical response where maybe we get a flood of appetite hormones and the metabolism shifts, and like our body's fighting against us to try to gain the weight back, like physically and mentally, that each time we go through that cycle, that physiological and emotional response gets a little bit stronger. Right? And so I see clients where they've gone through that diet cycle so many times that even just the thought of going on a diet can cause them to overeat. So they're not even physically restricting yet, but just the thought that I should be restricting,
right,
can trigger them to overeat. So I want to share some ways that these hidden restrictions can pop up.
Please.
That I see often. So it could be a judgmental comment from somebody. Should you be eating that? I mean, the family members, the holidays are huge triggers, right? Like we get those comments. We may not overeat now. We may actually try to control, but then later feel like, we rebel a little bit, or, we felt restricted, so we overeat. It could be, being uncomfortable eating in front of people, right? And so we choose very wisely, and then later we overeat. It could also be things like clothes shopping, right? We're putting on clothes, they don't look the way we want, even if we're not consciously saying, I mean, oftentimes a person may consciously be saying, I need to lose weight, or this, sucks, I hate clothes shopping, right?
Yeah.
But that can trigger overeating. Looking at pictures, whether they be current pictures and you're saying to yourself, oh my God, do I look like that? I have to lose weight. That's already telling the brain you should be restricting food.
Yeah.
Or you look at past pictures. Oh, I used to look so good. I wish I could look like that again. It could be an upcoming event. There's been multiple times when I'm specifically working with clients who were struggling with binge eating, where they're doing good, we're stabilized. And then all of a sudden they're like, I just started binging again. I don't know what's going on. And as we trace it back, this has happened several times. It was either an invitation to a baby shower, an invitation to a wedding, something where in the back of their head, they're going, I'm not going to be able to wear the dress I want to wear. Right. Or people are going to see me, or I'm going to see people I haven't seen in a long time. What are they going to think of the way that I look?
Yeah.
Right? And so these are all ways that we can feel restricted. And they're like, but I know this is what they'll say once we talk about it. I know I should be cutting back so I can fit into the dress, but all I'm doing is eating.
Yeah.
Right. Like I can't stop eating.
Where you can look at that and see it as like the process that's happening, and they're not connecting all those dots.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So again, just to summarize that, there's a physical state of restriction and there's an emotional state of restriction.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And both equally can be harmful as far as.
Absolutely. And the more we engage in restrictive behavior over time, I think it gets even harder to manage, because the subtlest of things that we may not even consciously be saying, things like weight loss, eat less, like those may not even be conscious thoughts, but the brain has already started to make the connection. These types of things equal restriction. So even if we're not physically engaging in a diet or trying to restrict food as a result of these things, the brain has already made the connections that these things equal a potential for a food shortage.
Right.
And so we automatically become hyper responsive to food, hyper aware of food. We want to eat more, and the brain is going to feel deprived. It's a survival response. If the brain thinks it's not going to get food, right? Food and appetite are regulated in the survival part of the brain, right? Our more primitive part of our brain. So it doesn't matter what our conscious thoughts are at that point. that survival part of the brain is always going to kick in and override.
So let's do the hopeful part of this and start to work our way backwards. As you're saying that every time somebody cycles through that, it reinforces the restriction and the fear and the guilt. So what do you do? Like, what then becomes the process to get ourselves back to this, like where you are now, where you can eat without guilt, where you're not seeing the restriction all the time? How do we get there?
Yeah. So it can be a process, but I'll try to give you like a nice little happy overview. Obviously, there's a lot of nuance to it and a lot of things we have to work through internally to get to this place, right?
This is like months worth, years worth of work that I'm asking you to talk about in an hour.
But so one of the first things is I really like to get people started eating regular, like satisfying meals. Okay. So to me, a satisfying meal has three components. It has to be adequate, right? If we're not eating enough, we're not going to be satisfied. It has to be balanced, right? Like if we're just eating one food or one type of food all the time, you know, we're going to feel like we're missing out. So we want some balance in there. And the third thing is that it has to taste good.
Yeah.
Okay? Like we could eat a perfectly balanced meal of salmon and broccoli and sweet potato and avocado and like, you know, have all of our macros and it's enough food and all of that. But like, I mean, come on, at some point it's going to be like, I need some more fun in here, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I teach kind of a form of gentle nutrition that I call PF3, which is an acronym. The P stands for protein and the three F's are fiber, fat, and fun. So we're, you know, balancing different areas to make sure we have carbs, to make sure we have fats, to make sure we have a little protein, but also fun, right? Like we have to be reminded that food has to taste good, that, you know, we may need to consciously work through the guilt, you know, until we get good at it. So, you know, there's no reason to stress about food. We may still have it, we may still need to work through it, but that fun is that reminder that we're working towards allowing food to be more relaxed and enjoyable.
Right.
So, so getting in regular balanced meals. Now, if somebody has been dieting for years, or they've gone through cycles of binge eating for years, or even less than years, what happens is the body can start to deregulate normal hunger and appetite cues. So an individual may not experience what I call stomach hunger. These are not official terms, right? Stomach hunger. So this is where we feel hungry in our stomach, right? This is the body's first signal to say, hey, it's time to eat. Like, let's get some food in your belly. So that may actually disappear, and they may not feel hunger until they feel what I call body hunger, which is a headache, maybe feeling a little dizzy, or you're foggy, you're having trouble concentrating, you're getting tired, like
shaky.
Right, shaky.
Yeah.
Or at this point, your stomach may start to kick in, but you're basically ravenous. So they go from like, I don't feel anything to like, holy cow, if I don't get food in myself now, like we're gonna have a problem, right? You're hangry, you know? So that, these cues may not properly be functioning, and fullness may also not properly be working. They may require more food than they may think they need, or they may compare to others. They may need more for a while to feel full and satisfied. So we have to honor that through the process. So to get back some of those normal hunger and satiety cues, we may actually have to temporarily eat unintuitively, right? So with intuitive eating, you eat when you're hungry, you stop when you're full. I mean, there's a lot of nuance to it, but we may have to go against that for a little bit to get the body re-regulated. So I don't want to say force, but like advise somebody to, eat a regular satisfying meal, again, adequate, balanced, yummy, eat a satisfying meal every 4 to 5 hours to get your body back. Your circadian rhythms will reset after some time. So you'll start producing digestive enzymes and insulin during these times when your body's used to being fed. Doesn't mean it has to be the exact same time every day, but just trying to get an adequate, satisfying meal every 4 to 5 hours. And if it doesn't last you 4 to 5 hours, by all means, have a snack. If you get hungry, sure, absolutely. But the idea is we want to be able to eat enough food so that we can go 4 to 5 hours. Because if we get in our head, this diet culture, eat every 2 to 3 hours, you're going to be thinking about food more. With treating binge eating, we're trying to think about food less, right? Like one of the symptoms almost every single one of my clients is I think about food all the time. So if I tell you to eat every 2 to 3 hours, like you're just going to be thinking about food all the time, right? So let's get you to a different type of pattern, get your hunger and appetite re-regulated. and, get these meals. So in that phase, we may have to go through meal planning strategies. How do we balance meals? Like that may be some re-education that we need to do. People overcomplicate meal planning. So I'm like kind of a meal planning guru. I'm really good at making it simple for people. So, we may need to go through that just to get them to a place where they can have these satisfying meals on a regular basis. Because until that happens, it's much harder to work on the emotional and behavioral side of binge and emotional eating, because the body physically is saying, but I need more, right? And so to try to work against the emotion and the behavior at that point is much more difficult.
And I'm hearing, I mean, you're addressing trust with your body to trust you that you're actually going to feed it, and then that you're trusting yourself that you're allowed to walk up to food and have it at that moment, that you're not going to restrict yourself. So that's a process in itself too.
Yeah, right. Even just getting to the point, and then, going back to what I was saying earlier with Alke, like sometimes another barrier in that having regular satisfying meals could be, an underlying thought process or belief that like, I don't deserve to be taken care of. Like everyone else's needs are more important than mine. Therefore, I don't make the time to stop and have a meal, right? Like the deadline, the so-and-so's needs, this email, like they're all more important than me being physically taken care of. And so that's another thing that, so it's simple to say, sure, eat every 4 to 5 hours, but like the practical application of that for people can be quite difficult.
Right. Oh my goodness. All these layers of the onion that we're peeling back, that everybody has their own individual issue too. Do you have your clients set timers for those really busy individuals? Like what are some of your hacks or advice for not skipping?
So a lot of times, I try to use a motivational interviewing process where I try to get the client to come up with the solution, right?
Love it.
Because if it's their idea and they feel like it's going to work for them, then they're going to be much more likely to follow through. I'm probably not one who's going to like throw that out there as a recommendation, because people, if they perceive that as like, oh, she's kind of crazy, or like, I don't know, like if there's resistance there, then they're not going to latch on to that. But I have had clients who have come up with that themselves. And so I'm certainly not going to stop them from doing it. If that is the type of thing that works for them, then yeah, that's what they're going to need to do. And we also have to be flexible with ourselves through the process. Like there may be days where it just doesn't happen. So we do, we overeat, or we, get starving, or whatever happens, we accept it, we move on. We don't dwell. We may not accept it and we may dwell, but like the idea is working towards a
goal.
place, right, where we can accept that we're human, we're imperfect, life is going to happen. Sure, maybe we could have planned better, but like we didn't, like we had other things, like it's still going to happen. So.
Right. So I'm going to take the opportunity to ask you this, because I recently interviewed Dr. Michelle May of Am I Hungry programs, and she's talking the same language as far as like just that intuitive trust. And that's what you're talking. And I had asked her this too. So clients, there's no promise within this process of like, it's not a scale driven journey here. Like do you find some people gain a little before they start to lose, or before they level off, or like, how do you talk to your clients to help them settle into this? It's not about the scale right now. It's about getting you mentally sound within this journey.
Yeah. So this is a very tough topic, because people are, probably 95% of my clients, when they first reach out to me, are very attached to weight loss.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, even if they consciously see, well, I need to fix the binge eating so I can lose weight. Like that is their thought process. It's not that I'm telling them that. So they're very attached to weight loss. So weight loss is going to perpetuate cycles of restriction, which is going to then perpetuate cycles of binge and emotional eating, or emotional overeating. So I don't want to dishonor the fact that they feel uncomfortable in their body. Like I have to like openly say, like, I have a privilege. Like I live in a smaller body, right? Naturally, like, sure, I went through periods of binge eating and I gained weight, but, and I could probably easily gain weight if I started binge eating again, right? But I'm not. Like currently I'm living in a body that is the size that society says is okay. Yeah. So that is a privilege in the sense that I don't get judged when I stick a piece of pizza in my mouth, right? Like I don't get people looking at me, or judgmental comments or things like, I do sometimes, like, about certain things, but whatever, you know, like I'm
Yeah,
able to.
no, I love you're going here. Yes.
So, you know, I have that privilege. So I can't pretend that I know what it feels like with, you know, if I had an extra 100 pounds on my body. Like I can't pretend to know what that feels like. Feeling uncomfortable in certain situations or comments from people. Like you know, clients have told me things they've experienced and things people have said to them and family members, strangers, you name it. So I can't pretend to say that, you know, I understand that, right? That I can make that go away. But what we can work on is learning how to better deal with those situations and
Yeah.
accepting where you're at currently, because there's always going to be jerks out there, right? That don't understand, that are judgmental. You know, that's really on them. So what I usually tell clients is like, I don't want to discount how you're feeling in your body. Like that's very valid how you're feeling in your body and about
Right.
your body, right? Like I'm not discounting that. What I'm saying is let's just take weight loss and just put it on the side burner, right?
Yeah.
For a little bit. And let's see how this goes and see how we can change your relationship with food. We can work on body image at the same time. And let's see where that takes you, right? This is, and that's scary for people. So at that point, people either run, they're like, oh my God, that's way too scary. My ego is taking over. The ego, you know, the protector is like, you can't do that. That's too, you know, we don't know what happened over there. Like, why would you want to be out of your bubble? Even if you hate your bubble, like it's predictable, right?
Yeah.
So, and then other people are like, you know what, I'm so fed up with where I am. I can't take another minute of this discomfort. I've got to at least try to get to this other place. So yes, I will put this on the side burner for now. So I do encourage clients to not weigh themselves, to not, you know, focus on the scale. But some of the outcomes that I do see from clients that they will tell me, you know, I hear quite often, my digestion is so much better. I'm less bloated. My clothes are more comfortable, right? Whether there was a significant amount of weight loss, they still feel more comfortable in their clothes because there's less bloating, there's less fluctuations,
Right.
there's less back and forth. I'm thinking about food way less than I used to, right? I'm feeling in control when I eat things. I'm not eating to the point where I feel uncomfortable. And that feels, I mean, if you've lived in a space where you have struggled with binge eating, like you really don't like that feeling. I mean, even when I was binge eating, aside from the fact that I was, you know, gaining weight and my clothes weren't fitting, and I was, you know, pre-diabetic because of this back and forth way of eating.
Yeah.
Sure, those two things bothered me. And of course I wanted to change them. But the piece for me that was the most like motivating was just how out of control I felt. Like as human beings, we have a need for control. And when you feel out of control, like you really want to change that.
Right. Right. And what you're saying is that you can get to a point when you can feel that way, that no matter how much you feel the opposite way at this moment, that if you go through the process, and you tell me, like, I feel like you're an integral part of the process. I think to go it alone feels way more hopeless than, I'm sure, to have you sit across from this person and they went through all these other emotions throughout their week. They need your sound, calm instruction and mind at this point to help keep that journey going so that the panic moments don't feel so intense. Is that
Right.
accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, with anything in life, what we focus on grows, right? So when you know you're meeting with somebody every week, or I mean, and I even stay in contact with clients between sessions too. They can message me and things like that, or schedule a phone call if they're having a really rough day.
Yeah.
You know, we can do a phone check-in. But having that support person also, I think, helps keep this top of mind, right? This is what I'm working on right now. This is the thing I'm focusing on, right? So it helps us to really put a lot of our energy into healing our relationship with food. And also, like, naturally we tend to second guess ourselves, right?
Yes.
Am I doing this right? Should I be doing that? Oh my God, am I messing up, right? And so when you have that support person that is an expert in an area and you know they've helped other people, and you know that they have a process and they have systems in place to help you, it's like, okay, well, if they're telling me, like, you know, keep digging the tunnel, like you're almost to the end, right? Like then we feel a little more pushed to do it, right? It does give us a little more tenacity and determination to keep following the path. I think we're less likely to give up. so soon when we have that support person, and that gives us a little bit of confidence that, okay, I am doing the right things, right? We want instant results. We want to change things super fast.
Yeah.
That doesn't always happen. And so sometimes we need that support person with us to make sure we don't throw in the towel too quick.
Right. And I really want my listeners to hear this, because it is that week to week check-in. And you mentioned it even with your own therapist, like showing up to a session sometimes when you don't think you need it, and then you walk out of it and go, that was exactly what I needed today. That to trust the process, to not overthink it, decision fatigue it to the point where we talk ourselves out of using somebody because we feel like, well, I'm in an okay spot right now, but we don't know what the week will bring. So just trusting the process.
And even too, a lot of times there's just fear there that, like, it's not fear, like, I've been able to unpack it with several clients as we're working through whether or not we're going to work together. They're like, well, it's not that they don't trust me or think that I have a system that works. It's, can I, the client, right? Can I actually follow? Can I do what she's going to lead me to do?
Right.
Like, am I capable of doing this? Right. That's your ego kicking in, right? Your ego wants to keep you where you feel, where it's predictable, right? The ego likes predictability, even if what you're predicting is terrible, right?
Right.
But it's predictable, and there's comfort in predictability. So going over here to this other space where the ego's not sure what's going to happen over there, there's lack of predictability. So it's like, let's just stay over here because we don't know about that. Or it's, I've tried so many things in the past, and I failed. So, like, of course I'm going to fail at this too, right? That's your ego talking.
Yeah. And no one likes to sit in discomfort. Like this process, there's going to be moments of discomfort because, like what you're saying, you're bumping out of your normal, but it's really helpful to have somebody else help us through that discomfort, because it's not fun the whole time. We get fun moments. We get those like champagne moments, but it's not the whole journey. Yeah, exactly. So I just wanted to make sure, as we're kind of getting to the end here, but you had said you really like to break down into like physical needs, emotional, social, spiritual. You're a firm believer that our whole being, which I love this. I feel like my last 3 interviews have all said the same thing. Like, let's keep just pounding this in, that our whole being needs fed in order to get to that like calm. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
My computer just went really weird.
Oh, I can see you and hear you.
Okay. Sorry. Direction, not perfection moments all the time.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. So yes, feeding our whole being, go into that.
Yeah. So I kind of modeled this off the concept of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like, we have our needs that as human beings, we all have needs. Certain needs have to be met in order for us to really function at a higher level of needs. But rather than look at this as a pyramid, I just break it down into 4 categories. And so a lot of times I look at food more as the symptom and not the problem. So people come, I need to fix my eating, right? Like, they're talking about their eating and food as if that is the problem. But really, the eating and the food is just a symptom of other underlying things. So rather than put our focus on the food, sure, we can engage in like hacks and tricks and tips and strategies or whatever to kind of manage it and use willpower, to get through. But that, it's kind of superficial Band-Aid kind of stuff. But when we can work on the underneath and say, okay, well, what are the things that are really driving this need to overeat? Then the eating really dissipates. Again, also from the mindset, I don't really see the eating as a problem anyways. Like, it's really our reaction to the eating that is more the issue.
Keep saying that. Keep saying that. I love it. Yes.
But still, so I break it into four basic areas. So we have our spiritual needs. I'm not even sure if I've named this right. I just haven't been able to come up with another name. But to me, the spiritual side of things is just connecting to something outside of ourselves. Mm-hmm. So whether it be art, music, nature, meditation, journaling, prayer, religion, finding time to ponder our purpose in life, like just having some connection that really helps us to put things in perspective, like sitting and talking about the vast size of the universe, right? Like, it helps us to see our problems as being much smaller, right? It puts things in perspective. It also allows the brain to disconnect and feel some relaxation, right? We know when we connect with nature, stress hormones decrease. When we meditate and journal, like all these things are beneficial to our peace and calm. right? So we need to have that side of us. And that's something that some people, are lacking. Not that they don't enjoy it or don't want to do it, but maybe they don't prioritize it, or, they don't see the value in it. So, there's that piece. That's probably where I spend the least amount of time with clients, because I don't function as a spiritual leader.
Sure, prefer.
It's still
Yes.
worth, right. It's still worth a conversation and,
Yeah.
some thought to go into that. And then we have our social needs, right? Like as human beings, we're social creatures. And it's wired into us for survival, right? Like during tribal times, if we couldn't be part of the group, then our chance of survival was much lower, right? So the brain is still hardwired. Like our environment has evolved much faster than our brains have. So we're still hardwired to need those social connections. It gives us a sense of security that we don't realize it's giving us. So we need to have people we can call on if we have an emergency. We need to fit into a social environment where we feel like we fit in, right?
Mhm.
I don't want to say the word equal, because all humans, of course, are equal and we all have the same needs and things, but we need to feel like we fit in. We have similar interests, similar type careers. Like we just, we can fit in, we can relate to people. Like we
Yeah.
need that sense of community. And we need to have connection, we need to feel loved. Like this is really vital to us as humans. And I've seen this a lot with COVID, especially, people losing social connection, feeling disconnected. But even before that, like I had many clients where a big trigger for them with emotional and overeating was like, they, especially Miami is kind of a transient city, so I've seen a lot of clients where they're not from here, and it's very hard to make friends in Miami. Like a lot of people say that. So like they've been here, maybe they've been here 5 years, and they've just had a really difficult time developing a network of friends. And, so that leaves them feeling lonely. And then what, they're home by themselves on the weekends. What do? They eat, it's, so really looking and problem solving, how do we make sure that we feel, that our social needs are being adequately met? Then we have our emotional needs, right? Which is like, that's a huge category, right? How do we deal with stress? Like, do we have financial stress? Do we have relationship stress? Do we have coping mechanisms? I try to not focus so intently on the coping mechanisms. I mean, sure, like meditating and reading and having friends to talk to, all this stuff is great. But a lot of it really starts with what we're talking about in our head, right? So I focus a lot with my clients on what is the internal tape saying, right? Because what we think impacts how we feel, right? We're thinking about something great we accomplished, we feel good, right? We think about something terrible that happened to us, we don't feel so good. We feel angry or frustrated or whatever. So what we think about impacts how we feel, and how we feel is going to have an immense impact on our behaviors. Right? We're not going to take action when we're feeling defeated, when we're feeling shame, when we're feeling guilt. Like this isn't going to motivate us to take care of ourselves in a positive way. So I focus a lot in that emotional category with the words we're saying to ourselves. Like how are we processing this experience, right? It's about our perception and our point of view. And then of course with that also comes, like I talk a bit about like intuitive eating and mindful eating, and how we detach emotion from the eating process, and really morality from the eating process. There's no good, bad, you weren't good or bad, because of what you ate.
Yes, your foods aren't good and bad, and you're not good and bad. It's just,
right.
yes.
And then we have our physical health, right? So this is another area that I focus in a lot. So especially, depending on a client's history, we may have to dig in. Maybe there's digestive issues. Maybe they're dehydrated. Maybe they're not getting enough sleep. They're not eating those satisfying meals on a regular basis, right? Like their physical need for food is not being met. I see that so often. So, making sure things like food, sleep, water, digestion, if we need to look at malabsorption or other digestive things that may come up, but physical needs have to be met. Physical activity, right? I think that is a physical need. Like we have a need to move our bodies, right? Doesn't mean you have to like do it in a way that doesn't feel good or feels painful or that we dislike. It can be stretching, it can be a walk and a podcast, it can be talking with a friend, while we're doing something, a sport that we enjoy, gardening, doesn't have to be like going to the gym, no pain, no gain kind of mentality. So it's a lot. I mean, those are a lot of things to cover, but once we dig into all of those, you know, like a lot of times I'll ask clients, like, think back to a time in your life when you weren't emotionally overeating.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what was going on? And a lot of times they're like, you know, I didn't really think about food so much back then. Like I had my friends, we went out, like you know, I was financially secure. You know, like the point is, like, their needs were being met. Like, like
Right.
maybe not, I mean, we're never 100% met. We're, you know, we're always working on having our needs met,
Sure.
but like they were at a much more level place. And so they naturally just didn't overeat. Like there was no effort, there was no willpower that went into them not overeating.
Yeah.
Right. It
Yeah.
just happened because life was balanced at that time.
Right. And you said this is a lot, like, and that's what was coming to my mind. It's so much to sift through that I'm just going to say again, this is where a coach is immensely helpful, because you get to help that client pick it apart each week that you're together and talk the emotional piece or the physical piece. Or I can't tell you how many times I've talked with clients and they're like, man, I didn't realize that maybe that headache was coming from, I'm not drinking enough. I'm really not having enough, like things that should feel like maybe to them, why was I not very aware of that? But like to have somebody help pick all those little nitpicky parts, that it is really helpful. Which brings me to, I need you to go over, what are you doing in the world? You know, like how can everybody get in contact with you? Do you have programs running at the moment? Do you do one-on-ones? Like what's your thing?
So I do one-on-ones, programs. And then I'm also in the process of putting together and launching a group program. Part of why I'm really into the idea of, I've done groups in the past. I just have kind of had to recenter everything after COVID because it was a tumultuous year this past year, but now I'm getting back into groups. I've had clients who worked with me one-on-one and in groups, and hands down, almost everybody says they prefer the group. Because it just, you know, one of the things with binge and emotional eating, because there is so much shame involved with it, we can feel very alone and isolated in having that problem. We feel as though nobody else is struggling with this, and, you know, it's just me. And it feels good to be able to hear from other people. And sometimes it's actually, we get more benefit from watching someone else be coached than getting the coaching ourselves. Because, you know, it's like we can dish out advice to a friend and we know what they need to do. So when you see someone else getting coached, it's like, yeah. Like, I get it. That's exactly what this person needs to do. And then your brain can start to create parallels to how that is similar to your situation. And then you're accepting of, oh, I could change this, right? Like I see it for them, so how can I not see it for me, right? It opens us up a little bit. So the coaching is more effective, having the support of other people, hearing their problems, how they're dealing with it. I think it just takes it to a higher level, and results are better.
Let me ask you this. So it's led more as a support group. Like if we were all in the same room, it would be an instance of everyone kind of talks and then you're there to guide. Or are you doing like a teaching section and then everybody talks about it?
So I do a little bit of both. I have like pre-recorded content and videos for people to watch, just to cover the basic stuff, the things that, like, you know, the adequate meal piece, right? Or the satisfying meal piece, and some structure around meal planning, and, you know, how to get that in place. And then we can problem solve and deep dive during the group calls.
Love
right?
It. Yes.
To get into specifics. But even in the group coaching, I always give a few one-on-one sessions too. I think that's just necessary. It's not 100% group, because people still need the one-on-one. Everybody's problems are so unique. It's just hard to, you know, people just need that solid hour for themselves.
I can see that. Yes. That the whole package is important.
Yeah.
Yes. So to find you, again, is the best place to find you, your vidanutrition.com.
So I've got my website, vidanutrition.com. Vida is like life in Spanish. So life nutrition, Vida Nutrition. And then I'm also on Instagram at Dietitian Dina.
Okay. Good to know. And then are you active on Facebook or anything else?
I am actually. So, oh gosh, I'm so terrible. I have a Facebook group. It's called End Emotional and Binge Eating with Dietitian Dina.
Nice.
Right. So you can find that at Facebook. I mean, you can Google them, you can search the name in Facebook, or you can go to facebook.com/groups/Vida Nutrition.
Okay,
and that'll take us straight to the group.
fabulous. And I will put all of this in the show notes.
Okay, cool.
And I do love, I had to look up Vida. So I'm glad you said that. I'm like, oh, life, of course, that's perfect. Last minute things, just like as you send clients out the door or your kids out the door, do you have that little tidbit of wisdom that you pour over people that you'd like to share with us today?
Okay. Well, you mentioned the kids, so I'm gonna have to like go with that. So every day when I take them to school,
Yeah.
the one thing I say, well, first, like in the car, I was asking like, 'cause I think it's good to think about our day so we can set some intention for how we want to handle it. So
Yeah.
in the car ride to school, it's always, what's happening today? Anything you're worried about, anything, that you're excited about, just to get them thinking like, okay, I got this, I can work through it. Do I need to talk about anything? And then as I drop them off and hug them, whatever, it's okay, I want you to give 100% today, but you have to have fun doing it.
Oh,
Right? Like give your all, but try to have fun doing it. Like doesn't always have to be work, 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 work. Like how can you, intentionally add some fun in there, try to have a positive attitude. And then at the end of the day, we tend to always think about what went wrong, what we should have done more of. We ruminate and, it leaves us in always not a great feeling place. I mean, it's the brain naturally does it. We do that. So we have to intentionally try to think of something positive. So the end of the day is always, what are you thankful for? And what was the best part of your day? Like what went well? Did you accomplish something? Did you have fun doing something? Like what was the best part? So that way they can at least go to sleep thinking about something positive.
oh,
Yeah.
fabulous. I love asking this question because I have not had one time where I haven't been like, thank you. That's exactly like so good. Thank you for being with us today, Dina. You're amazing. Keep changing lives. All right.
Bye.
Bye.